Hi, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker. Coming up.
What has really gratified me is that among the cohort we have working with us, there's nobody that I've seen that this project is over their head.
A Highland Woodworker exclusive, the Great ROUBO Bench Build. Meet the all-star cast of master craftsmen who work together for 1 week with some really old wood. Then, are you running into dead ends trying to keep the live edge on your board? Popular Woodworking's Steve Shanesy has a great technique that could breathe new life into your project.
I thought, well, you know, this is kind of fun, and it seemed to come pretty easy.
Then we spend a moment with Brad Sells, the master craftsman who travels all around the world to find the perfect wood for his stunning sculptures. Watch what it takes to create handmade masterpieces like these. Also, we're shining the light on the Cumberland Furniture Guild in our Woodworkers Community Spotlight. Could this be the perfect group for you? These stories and more this time on the Highland Woodworker. I'm at Highland Woodworking, a one-stop shop for the latest tools and classes to enhance your next project. Beau Childs sourced some French oak that was growing during the time of Andre ROUBO's work. Put that together with Jamil Abraham, Chris Schwarz, Don Williams, and Jeff Miller, and a handful of eager woodworkers, and you've got the Great ROUBO Bench Build. Check it out.
When I heard about this, I jumped at the chance. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, not only to build the last bench I'll probably ever need or want, but to do it with such an amazing collection of talent in the room.
I've been obsessed, and my wife can tell you just as much. It's taken over my entire thought for these past 6 months or so.
I understand that Thomas Jefferson had a hand in this.
The story goes that Jefferson gifted white oak saplings to Marie Antoinette, which were subsequently planted on the grounds at Versailles. This is before the French Revolution. And they grew tall and large and strong until a storm took them out in '98. So they were harvested at that point, cut, air dried for 10 years, and our friend Mr. Childs went over and rescued them and repatriated them to the U.S.
That was about 2 years ago. Ron Brees, the great plane maker, about 20 minutes from here, invited me over for a dinner for the group of other furniture makers, and I went and I met Jamil.
Jamil Abraham.
The Jamil Abraham.
Benchcrafted fame.
.com.
Yes.
And he told me about the ROUBO bench and the parts that he makes. I asked him how thick the tops were, and he told me, and I said, well, where do you get wood that thick? Well, it's hard to get. We just laminate butcher block style. And I said, has anyone ever done it in the wood that ROUBO would have used at the time, French oak, in the thicknesses that he specified in his plans? And he says, no, you can't get that. And I said, well, guess what? Yes, you can. Some of these are 30, 32, 36-inch wide slabs.
It's perfect, I guess, for a ROUBO bench because as a one-piece slab, it makes a great reference. When it's flattened, it's got the weight that's necessary.
It does, and the rift and quarter sawn that comes out is just beautiful.
Beau Childs is set up to easily handle these huge slabs. First, using a wood miser band mill, he is able to cut the boards to rough dimension. Then, with a double-sided planer, he can thickness the stock precisely. All right, I understand Jeff Miller's here.
Yep.
Chris Schwarz.
Yes.
Don Williams, Ron Brees, and Beau Childs.
Oh yeah, well, I'm nobody compared to those guys.
Well, this is an all-star event.
Yes, it is.
Let's go watch.
All right.
In this
This is definitely a different scale than I'm comfortable with. I'm usually on a furniture scale or even smaller, and so these joints are a challenge. And it's a different tool set and it's a different mindset. But the principles are the same. It's marking lines, cutting lines, setting up machines to get the results you want.
Drove 2,700 miles to get here. We'll drive the bench back.
Now, this is somebody who loves a ROUBO bench.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see. Look at the smile. That's wonderful.
Great fun, but the middle of July in central Georgia may not be the best place to work in an air-conditioned space, but it's a lot of fun.
It's just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to just be immersed in woodworking for a whole week, which is not very typical for most of us.
It's been so much fun working with people, highly experienced people. I'm working right next to Don Williams, who's just quietly working away in the corner and helping out where people ask him questions, and Chris, who's been very helpful in guiding what's going on, and I'm trying to do my best to help people get set up so they can actually do these things and get things going.
It takes time, it takes money and tools and other things, and you have to have a certain skill level. What has really gratified me is that among the cohort we have working with us, there's nobody that I've seen that this project is over their head. It is definitely not a beginner's project, but if you're careful and you have mastery of a few tools, if you know how to measure and if you know how to cut straight and cut square and you have a mallet and a chisel, you can pretty much build one of these, but doing it in a time schedule like this is a challenge. There's no doubt about that.
I had built many workbenches. I don't know how many I built to this day, but I was trying to find ones that worked well for handwork, and it was very frustrating for me. And so I was making changes to my existing bench. And I was in New York visiting Joel Moskowitz at Tools for Working Wood, and he invited me to see his 1977 edition of ROUBO. And so we're paging through it, and ROUBO shows this bench in work. Like every plate where they're showing work being done, it's being done on this bench. And I kind of realized at that moment that ROUBO's bench, the one famous one from plate 11, was indeed what I had been migrating my bench to. I had even, unconsciously, had been moving the top so that the legs were coplanar with the front. I had put in a sliding dead man to support the work on edge. I had made a lot of changes that made it much more like that bench, and it kind of hit me like lightning when I was in Joel's apartment and got back from that, and I just knew I had to build one.
If you look at the results of ROUBO's lifetime, of the workmanship that was going on, French furniture in the late 1800s was pretty darn good. And if your desire is to make wonderful things, you could have worse places to start.
I'm not a traditional woodworker, and so for me, it's not all about going back to traditional methods. At this point, I have 3 ROUBO-style workbenches in my shop for students, for myself, and I find it's just incredibly versatile to have a big, solid bench that has wonderful ways to hold the work, no matter what the work is.
I'm trying to make my bench exactly to the print, like what ROUBO showed. No changes whatsoever. And everybody else is making tiny little changes, but I'm trying to make the bench. And they've completely allowed me to do that. And so it's very, very special for me to bring one of those into the world and have that as a reference, and not just to look at, but to use the heck out of.
In today's shop, you gotta have a good router table. And I've used the Craig router table in my shop for several years. It's dependable, and it's got a flat surface, which is what I need in a router table. It's also got an excellent fence. It's got a good starter pin, so you can do freehand work against a pilot bearing. It's got everything I need, but there was something missing. I'd been using the 2¼ horsepower routers, and I really wasn't getting the beauty of having what's almost a shaper in my workshop. Well, let's add the Triton 3¼ horsepower router. Now I'll have everything I need. This is a dual mode router. And the important thing about being dual mode is it can be a handheld plunge router, or it can be mounted under the table, and it can be easily adjusted from above the table. And it's easy to operate. Let me show you. As you can plainly see, the Triton 3¼ horsepower router, whether it's handheld or in the Craig table, it's a great marriage. One of these should be in every wood shop, and it's in my shop. Still ahead, Popular Woodworking, Steve Shanesy helps take the edge off a common woodworking problem. Then, fine furniture maker and master sculptor Brad Sells invites us into his extraordinary Tennessee workshop. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Sawstop is the only table saw that stops on contact with skin. Its safety features and unmatched quality and craftsmanship have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Put a Sawstop in your shop. Masterpiece Wood Finish is a special 3-part oil and wax system designed to enhance the beauty of wood. It's easy to apply, maintain, and repair. Applying several coats of the base coat, mid coat, and top coat to a prepared wood surface will create a finish that will make a craftsman smile. I helped develop Masterpiece Wood Finish, not just for your masterpiece, but mine too.
Do you need wood? Then go nowhere but Bell Forest Products. Come stand in awe of our 20,000 square foot showroom that houses over 75 species of exotic wood, the largest in the Midwest. What more could you want? A knowledgeable staff? Well, come in and speak to one of these handsome young men because they know wood. They breathe wood, they eat wood, they live wood, they love wood, they are wood. So plan your adventure to Bell Forest Products, 200 East Hematite Street, downtown Ishpeming, or visit us online at bellforestproducts.com. Because we got wood.
Forrest, manufacturer of the award-winning Woodworker 2, presents the PVW blade, designed specifically for the rip and cross-cutting of plywood and plywood veneers without splintering or chip-outs. Highland Woodworking has been a leader in woodworking education for over 30 years. They offer all kinds of woodworking classes year-round, ranging from how to hand-cut dovetails and mortises, to how to sharpen a plane or a chisel, how to build a cabinet, a chair, or a bookcase, or how to turn a wooden bowl. There are classes on wood finishing, French polishing, and even antique furniture restoration. For a list of upcoming classes that may interest you, go to highlandwoodworking.com. Highland Woodworkers are found all over the world. Email a picture of you and your woodworking project along with your name and where you live to picture@thehighlandwoodworker.com. Leaving the natural or live edge on a board can make for a stunning project. Steve Shanesy shows us how to prepare it, this time on Popular Woodworking's tips, tricks, and techniques. Steve, this is a beautiful piece. I just like the wavy edge. Tell me about it.
Well, Chuck, this is a plain sliced slab straight from the log that came from my backyard. Tree came down about 10 years ago. It was a cherry tree, and I air dried it. So I've been making furniture from that log now for a number of years.
Wow! I think there's a name for this. What did they call?
Oh, well, these free edges are called a waney or a free edge. And of course, it was made very famous and popular by one of the great American craftsmen of the last century, George Nakashima. He was a Japanese American and really popularized a style that was a blend of both contemporary or modern furniture and shaker. His philosophy was his working with wood would actually give the tree a second life. And he really wanted people to look at a piece of furniture, understand it came from a tree. And therefore, he saw these irregular edges that were just below the bark and the defects and knots and things like that as really beauty marks, not blemishes.
They add so much character.
They do add character, and you know, they also add a lot of additional color and figure to the wood.
Well, how do you get there? How do you make a piece like this, Steve?
Well, it's a little unusual insofar as you don't joint the edges like you do with normal lumber, and I'll show you.
So this is that waney edge you were talking about.
Exactly,
or live edge.
exactly. This is the edge of the sapwood, and underneath this would be the bark. You have an outer bark, an inner bark, and a cambium before you actually get to the sapwood. Now, that outer bark is very soft. It damages easily. You don't really want to work with it. So the trick is to eliminate the bark all the way down to the cambium and the sapwood so you can start working with the lumber.
Is it hard to get off?
Not really. It takes a little work, but not too much.
All right.
So the way I do that is, let's start with, if I had bark on this edge, I would use what I would consider kind of a bead or chisel, and just go through and start knocking that bark off real quickly. You could also do it with a a draw knife, but you have to be careful because where you see little bumps like this, you want to retain those. You don't want to get too aggressive with a draw knife or you might knock those down. Those also add character.
Sure, that's great.
So if I were going to knock the bark off, I'd just do it really quickly like this. It usually pops right off. Frankly, on this piece, the bark fell off while it was on the ground before I got it sliced up, so this one's kind of easy.
Wonderful.
So I use a draw knife, or excuse me, a spoke shave, nothing particularly special about this one. And as I work it, you want to make sure you find you're going in the right grain direction. And where you have imperfections and these little bumps and stuff, you want to work the knife over those so you're not destroying the real character of the wood itself or the edge.
So you just want to get down to that sapwood.
Yeah, and you're also eliminating some of the dark color of the cambium and the inner bark so that you get down to the sap color. Frankly, I think the sap color adds a nice frame for the heartwood.
Oh, sure.
So you just keep working that wood, getting rid of that. As you can see, it goes pretty quickly. Down here, you might see where it starts to go at an angle. You want to retain that angle. Sometimes you might find you need to work in the other direction.
Sure.
And where you have instances like this, I sometimes will go in with a file or a rasp and clean those up and then sand them. Now, speaking of sanding, after I've cleaned these edges and gotten down to where I want, I'll then use a detail sander and go ahead, again, maintaining the shape of the edge.
Sure.
I'll just sand it till it looks nice. And where hand sanding is necessary, I'll do that. Depending on the project and how refined a piece I may want or how I want the finished product to look, sometimes I'll use this power carver and actually go over the entire edge and put little facets in it. You can do it by hand with a regular gouge, of course, but that takes a little longer.
Sure.
So I use the power carver. It goes much more quickly. And sometimes I'll also use the power carver when you have defects down in here, and I will clean these up and actually make like a V-groove in these so it's not a sharp edge.
Well, that's interesting. Let's see how it works.
You have different tools. This is just a gouge. You can get bigger, smaller. You can get a V2, V-groove, or whatever. And it doesn't really work until you apply pressure. So when you apply pressure, so what I want to do is just put a series of random cuts in here. I don't want to establish a repeatable pattern.
So it adds some texture, is that right?
It does, Chuck. You know, it adds texture, and when you put a nice finish on this, it also adds a lot of shadow and light. So it makes the edge even more interesting.
Now, what kind of finish would you want on this? I wouldn't think I'd want like a lacquer finish or a film finish. What do you use?
You know, the finish should be appropriate for the project itself. Now, the bench we saw earlier, that's just a plain oil finish. That's sort of a shaker looking piece. It's simple. We actually use it in the house in the winter as a plant stand. So it's just a linseed oil finish. Now, other pieces I've done that are more refined, I actually do use a lacquer finish.
Sure.
I know Nakashima because I had the pleasure of interviewing him back in the late 80s. Actually used a combination of oil and polyurethane. So I think if a film finish was good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. This is great.
Good to see you, Chuck.
Coming up, wood like you've never seen it before. Meet Brad Sells. Next, you're watching the Highland Woodworker. Are your tools Tormek sharp? Tormek, consistent, reliable, and razor sharp. Tormek, sharpening innovation. Introducing the ultimate flush trim rounder bit by Whiteside. Get CNC quality cuts from your patterns every time. Whiteside, industrial grade and American made. Rikon Power Tools, a leader in woodworking power tools for over 10 years with a passion for quality and performance at an affordable price. Rikon has a full line of dependable tools, including a long list of industry-leading bandsaws like their new powerful 10-350 14-inch Professional. Rikon Power Tools, tools designed by woodworkers.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
Bessie, a leader in clamps since 1936. If you know clamps, you know Bessie. Bessie, simply better. Sawstop is the only table saw that stops on contact with skin. Its safety features and unmatched quality and craftsmanship have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Put a Sawstop in your shop. If you can't make it to Atlanta, then you can always shop us on the web at www.highlandwoodworking.com. Moment with a Master is presented by Masterpiece Wood Finishes, helping you build beautiful furniture. When it comes to sculptured art, look no further than Brad Sells. He invited us into his Tennessee shop to show us how he creates his unique works of art.
You know, one of my first museums was the Smithsonian, so that doesn't hurt. I've done thousands of these vessels, and I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do before I start, but it's kind of like playing a jazz improv song. You know, there is a tune there, there is a structure there, but it's free to be spontaneous and evolve and change.
Welcome to Bark Studio in Cookeville, Tennessee, or the place wood artist Brad Sells calls home.
Come on, Chuck, let me show you my humble little workstation here.
Take one step inside and chances are you'll be envious of the wall of high-value natural resources and amazed by the artistic works in progress, shaped with his unique design style. Upstairs, Brad's colorful gallery showcases his latest eye-catching pieces. Brad Sell's woodworking story started back in high school while taking a shop class.
I thought, well, you know, this is kind of fun, and it seemed to come pretty easy. And so I enrolled in some classes when after graduating and at the Appalachian Center for Craft, and you know, did a few furniture projects, but was a ceramic major for a while. And I really love the fluid form, the organic shapes that I would come across throwing clay. But you know, it was kind of a temporary thing. I couldn't achieve it in a finished product.
Brad's fine furniture designs are top notch. It was in his pursuit of furniture building that he found his passion doing this. Sculpting forms in wood.
It's kind of different than a lot of other subjects because the wood itself, it has spirit, you know. There's no question in my mind, you know, when I say that. Some people look at me like, yeah, are you sure? It's kind of crazy talk. But I mean, I truly believe that. You get a euphoric feeling when you make something beautiful. It's not terribly different from a runner's high. You know, it's the same type of feeling. And then doing it all day. I mean, you know, it's an intense process with some of the machinery that I'm running. I mean, there is an adrenaline kind of aspect to it. And but you know, when you get done in the day, I mean, you know, it's like I've compared it in the past to farm work. I mean, you feel like you've been hauling hay if you've been using the heavy stuff all day. It's extremely physical, and you know, that's been something I've always enjoyed, as working hard.
When it comes to finding that perfect tree, sometimes it's right around the corner. Other times it's halfway around the world.
Well, our first tree safari was in Africa. We were in the Johannesburg area. We were looking for red ivory, which is the royal wood of the Zulu people. And you know, being over there, we came across other woods that were just along the trail, so to speak. An important thing for me is access to the material. You know, my philosophy was, if I go over there, you know, I can find wood like I find here, you know, and it's abundant and it's relatively inexpensive or free. Hawaii, you know, we found big koa trees and big monkey pod trees.
One of the biggest trees I've ever seen. Oh my God.
Took a while to get her down.
I bet it did. So how are you ever going to move this thing?
Cut it down to size and jack it up, put some beams under it and move it like a house.
How much do you guess this thing weighs?
We're guessing anywhere from 50 to 70 ton.
Goodness gracious.
Well, Brad, this is what me and Richard were thinking, is cut this thing off right here and offer you this part of the tree.
I'll do my best to do it justice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
And that came over on a boat. I had half a container of material, and then it came across the country on a train and then on a truck from Nashville.
What do you see in something like this, one of your figures?
Yeah, I've been working on a series of pieces that are inspired by dance. I call it On Point series.
You start with something like this, but then you end up with expressing it in a form like that.
This is a neat piece, and the series kind of sometimes it's more figurative, and sometimes it kind of migrates back to the vessel form. Some have orbitals on them, and some of them just kind of transcend into an abstract kind of form. And you know, this is the one I'm working on right now. And this was a holly tree that had been pruned, and when it came back out, it had just multiple shoots that just went fairly straight. And when I first started working on this, there's 3 legs left. I removed 4 legs, of various length. And I really like this one. It starts off as an arm and then migrates into kind of a foot there. Of course, this is all kind of rough right now. And then I'll mount this, on a little base, and it's if I'm lucky, I can get it to balance just as it sits.
To be on point.
Yeah. This is a piece I call Humpty Dumpty because it had all this great rod in it, and it just didn't stick together very well. So I'm in the process of, I put it back together using bow ties and left the voids there. I've kind of burnt the edges, and now it's ready to clean up all the mess and finish sanding. But this piece is going to be a wall hanging piece. It'll end up in California with a collector friend of mine there. This is what we'd come across. This in the Amazon. This was there's actually no center in this piece. It was kind of an outcropping, the kind of the buttress part of the tree that had come down, and then they'd cut it off so that they could mill the log. So this was a remnant of a harvested log.
It's the combination of a creative mind, hard work, and maybe even a sixth sense for knowing a piece of wood's artistic potential that makes anything that Brad Sells creates a masterpiece.
For me, it's a way of life. People from the outside, they see it as, okay, well, how do you let go of the object? It's, for me, it's not about the object. It's about the process, and it's about the evolution of the product and how it's going to change. I also realize that if they don't walk out the door, I'm going to be doing something else, if they don't find a home.
Woodworking societies and other groups are a great resource to tap into. Let's learn more about the Cumberland Furniture Guild in our Woodworkers Community Spotlight.
The Cumberland Furniture Guild was started in September of 2000 when 7 Middle Tennessee makers, brought together by a common interest in studio furniture, joined forces to create an organization that would foster creative craft, artistic integrity, and expanded opportunities for the fine furniture community in the area. Membership is open to any individual, group, or organization interested in our cause, including studio furniture makers, craft artists, hobbyists, and collectors. Since its inception, the Cumberland Furniture Guild has become an important resource for the furniture making community in our area. In addition to regular community fellowship at lively and informative membership meetings, we also host juried exhibitions, furniture making classes, continuing education seminars, and publish a quarterly newsletter. As we continue to build on these beginnings, the Guild will have an even greater opportunity to influence a broader community's awareness of fine furniture in our region. The Cumberland Furniture Guild is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the makers, patrons, and sellers of handmade furniture, and to the development and promotion of their craft through education, networking, exhibition, and community service. To learn more about the Cumberland Furniture Guild, please visit us on Facebook or at cumberlandfurnitureguild.org.
If you'd like your woodworking society, community, or organization to be highlighted on the Highland Woodworker, then contact us at this email address and we'll tell you how. Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today. Well, that does it for this episode of the Highland Woodworker. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker.